What's going on, everybody? Welcome back into another edition of the Fan Committee Football Podcast. I am Joe Keane, joined as always by Michael Herrera. We're here to talk some Week 2 NFL results. And Mike, how you feeling after a phenomenal showing from your Miami Dolphins this weekend?
I'm really excited about the Dolphins. I think week two is incredibly important in terms of the NFL because week 2 is really where a lot of teams set the tone after week 1. Because, week 1, things happen, jitters, team chemistry. It's not all gelling together just yet. Week 2 is where teams kind of start to settle in and how good is this team going to be this season. And I think the Dolphins have shown that they very easily could get a wild card spot if they keep playing like this. I love the way Mike McDaniels is running this offense. The team was not playing great in the first half. It was very anemic, but I really like that the team out of halftime was able to really adjust. The Ravens played a great game. I can't disparage what Lamar Jackson, Bateman, Duvernay, what all these guys did because they played amazingly. But I think the Dolphins really played a great game towards the end of that game. We really outclassed them in every way, and I'm really excited about the season because I think the Dolphins really can go far this season. I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, we were talking last week, game of the week potential for them, but we didn't anticipate the barn burner that it was the 42-38 final. The comeback for the Dolphins was incredible. Yeah. I mean, they were down what was it, 35-14 at one point? Or was
starting the fourth quarter, 35-14.
Okay. Tua with 6 touchdowns, even with the 2 interceptions, 6 touchdowns, 469 pass yards. I love this game because for Lamar and Tua, it was just this. What everyone was saying about him this offseason, they both spat in the face of it. Lamar Jackson looks like he's a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. I was having him on the outskirts of that. I had guys like Joe Burrow ahead of him. But right now, I don't see a world where Lamar isn't in that discussion. And as for Tua, even now it seems like people are coming up with reasons like, well, did you see the ball to Tyreek Hill? It could have been 70 yards. It was only 60. This is such nitpicking. Everyone wants to hate on Tua, and I don't really get why. But you can't say anything after that performance. I mean, Waddle and Hill with 2 amazing games. They both were lethal the entire time. Hill especially was going deep multiple times. And I don't know how you can say anything bad about Tua after that game. Gesicki got involved. Everybody was catching passes.
It's really annoying to see the media still talking about the team and they're saying all this stuff about, the Ravens defense collapsed, blah, 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 blah. The Ravens still, it's not like the Ravens were terribly offensively in the second half of the game. They still scored another 10 points, which obviously is a much slower pace than what they were on earlier. But I think it's kind of unfair to say like, it's because the Ravens defense kind of just dropped the ball. The offense dropped the ball. It's kind of disparaging what this team is doing. And I think it's because a lot of people are just scared to admit that like the team might actually be decent in the year, that they might be wrong about Tua. And I'm not here to say that Tua is a generational talent. He's not Josh Allen. He's not Justin Herbert. He's not Patrick Mahomes. Not even Joe Burrow. But I mean, Joe Burrow hasn't played well this year, but
I'm still in on Burrow, but we can talk about it.
Well, yeah, for sure. I think it's probably just a Super Bowl hangover. I think they'll bounce back at some point during the season. But I think just a lot of people are afraid to admit that Tua might actually be at least a decent quarterback. And for now, he's our franchise quarterback. I don't see any reason to replace him because I think he's playing well. He fits this offense. He's very good at running the RPO. He is great at throwing. He gets the ball out fast. He's very accurate most of the time. I know a lot of people like to nitpick that. There's like, he's accurate. And then they show the one like tipped pass where it went the other way. And it's like, yes, did he overthrow an interception and Marcus Williams picked it off? Yeah, that was a bad throw. But, it happens to the best of us. You don't see people suddenly saying that, take Justin Herbert out the game because he threw a bad interception, but no one's complaining about him. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of people just don't want to admit that the Dolphins offense was actually really good. Tyreek and Waddle, as of now, me personally, I think they're probably the best receiving duo in this league right now. This is very much like, it's not one of them's the 1, the other's the 2. This is like 1A, 1B. Right. I think these guys are the focal point of this offense right now, and I think it's really exciting to see. And also, like the defense, the Dolphins' defense really held up in that second half. I mean, Xavier Howard had some nice pass breakups. We really limited Lamar in that second half. Only the 10 points compared to the 28 from the first half. We had them less than half of what they scored originally. So I think the defense also should get a big credit in this win because it wouldn't have mattered if Tua had thrown 6 touchdowns if the Ravens had still been able to keep scoring because we would have just been behind. But, I think all around the team really rallied. And I think a lot of that's also Mike McDaniels. I think he knows how to coach the game of football. And I think he's great. And I think a lot of people aren't talking about the Dolphins. Are we a Super Bowl team? I don't know if we can beat the Bills. I think that's a very promising outlook if we can beat the Bills next week. But as of now, I think we're solidly a wild card team right now.
Yeah, that's going to be a really interesting matchup this week. I think the Bills, we saw what they did to the Titans last night, 41-7 final for the Bills. Diggs 3 touchdowns of his own. They're going to be a tough to beat. I mean, their defense looks like the best in the league right now. Their offense is
Yeah.
probably the best in the league. But if you guys come out with that firepower again, that could be one. You could have another game of the week after this week with the Bills following up the Ravens here. But if you guys pull off an upset, all bets are off in that division because all of a sudden it gets really interesting.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I still do think the Bills are the best because, I mean, what we've seen from the Bills is crazy so far. I mean, the Bills have come out firing on every cylinder possible in
Yeah.
this season. I'm really excited for next week because even if we lose to the Bills, as long as we can put up a solid showing and, not lose by like 30, that's still a win in my book. As long as we're not getting outright thrashed by the Bills, I think the season could be special for the Dolphins. And of course, the Bills are already having a magical season and they're going to go far. I really do think they're going to make the Super Bowl this year. I totally agree with you.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think both those teams are going to be heard from. I will say my 2 1 seed predictions are looking incredible right about now. Bills and the Eagles. And I guess we can talk about last night's Eagles game now. What did you make of this? Because I saw this as a potential star-making performance from Jalen Hurts. I saw it as the fact that it proves the fact that the Eagles own the Vikings, as I've been saying. It's a nice partnership between the Packers and the Eagles. I always talk about it. Packers destroy the Cowboys, the Eagles destroy the Vikings. It helps everybody out. It's a win-win. And that's exactly what happened last night. I thought the Eagles, they were just ready. That home crowd, I just knew that home crowd at the link was going to be ready to not only boo the Vikings, boo Jalen Rager, of course, but they were also ready to lift up that Eagles team. And we saw just how incredible everyone on that team played last night. I really thought. I mean, Slay. Talk about what you saw from that. Slay against Jefferson. I wish we used Jair that way against Slay. I know we run a different defense, or not against Slay, against Jefferson, but I know we run a different defense. But Slay was all over Jefferson last night.
I think that game was great. I think the best way to describe that game was this meme I saw someone put out for the game. They're saying this country simply does not have the infrastructure to support a Bills Eagles Super Bowl.
Yeah,
And I think they're totally right. The Eagles came out just like similar to the Bills. They've come out to play. This team is not messing around. I liked the Eagles before the season. I still thought the Rams and the Packers were better NFC teams, but honestly, the Eagles are currently the best in the NFC. I don't think there's any way to really doubt that right now. I think the Packers are going to give them a good fight, though. I think after, they had a weird week 1, but, they really bounced back against the Bears. But the Eagles are great. I mean, I loved what I saw from them. Darius Slay really did lock up Jefferson. And, he played great. The guy's 31, but it doesn't really look like he's lost a step. He's very much still a very technically sound cornerback. He really knows how to play the game, and he really locked up Jefferson. And he forced Jefferson to make some kind of rookie mistakes. We saw a lot of plays where Jefferson decided to try to run behind Darius Slay instead of cutting across his face to get himself open. And, I think he had him flustered. That really speaks to the Eagles and the defense, especially. I think the defense was amazing last night.
Yeah, and something that really was a topic of discussion in week 1 was a lot of Eagles fans were getting on Jonathan Gannon's defensive schemes. They were upset Hassan Reddick was in coverage, and it happened a little again last night as well. But I think that what I was saying was in that Lions game last week, I really thought it was just a lot of garbage time, Jared Goff performance. That's what he does best in games like that. And I thought the Eagles were going to come out and beat the Vikings. Did I expect it to be that easy? No. But once again, the Eagles continue to surprise many people and prove their doubters wrong as they have for the last few years here, besides that 2020 season. But other than that, they've been proving people wrong for half a decade now. And, man, Hurts is just in that boat with Tua and Lamar as well. Like, people were saying, can the Eagles win anything with this guy? Isn't he just another one-dimensional running quarterback? Because I was saying, well, did we forget what he looked like in college? The dude has a rocket of an arm when he's able to throw. We saw it to Quez Watkins last night. And once again, he's another guy. This last year was his first year as the full-time starter. This is only his 3rd season. He's very young. Why can't he get better? And last night, I thought he looked like Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray. I thought he looked like those kind of players. I thought he looked very, very good. And Devonta Smith was getting involved on the first week. I thought the run game, it was okay. It could have been better. It was better in week 1, but it was still pretty solid. And the defense, I thought, looked what I thought it was going to be. One of the best defenses in football. Slay was obviously the big highlight, but I thought everybody was doing their job. So as for the Vikings, though, the Kirk Cousins is now 2-10 on Monday Night Football. I'm just I'm not even saying this as a Packers fan. I know I got my hat on right now, but Kirk Cousins cannot win a Super Bowl. It's not going to happen. I know the Vikings fans were excited that they beat us week 1, and I'm not going to say like they got lucky because the Packers. I guess they got lucky in the fact that the Packers just didn't prepare for them in any way. That's basically what happened, but that's what happened in week 1. So maybe the Vikings win the division still. We'll have to see. But I mean, they're not on the Eagles level. They're not. They might not even be on Tampa's level right now. What do you say about Minnesota's performance?
No, it's very discouraging to see because in the first game I really did think that maybe the Vikings were going to be a good team, but it kind of just seems to be more that the Packers just didn't play to the level they were supposed to, and the Vikings took advantage of that. But when they played an actually good team who's playing to the level they should have been, they kind of crumbled. Obviously, I've criticized Kirk Cousins in the past sometimes. I'm sure a lot of people have. But it's kind of a shame to see him. A lot of people talk about the statistic where like he's never won like a Monday Night Football game or something like that, something similar.
He's like never won a road Monday Night Football game. He's 2-10 all time.
Wow. I thought that I was like maybe that's just a weird coincidence. I was like, the Eagles and Vikings, this is going to be good games, can be evenly matched. But I guess I was wrong about Kirk Cousins. It's a shame because I still think he's a good regular season quarterback, but I guess people are right. He's not really able to really show out in the playoffs or even in primetime games. I do think that the Vikings have a good team. They got good receivers. Their defense wasn't terrible last night. The problem was just that I think the Eagles were able to overwhelm them. Like you were saying, Jalen Hurts, similar to Tua, I think they're both coming into this third season. It's really big for them, and I think both of them have really shown that they're kind of rising up to the occasion. Jalen Hurts, I think, was incredible last night, and he played great. And I'm really happy for Jalen Hurts. I'm glad to see that he's succeeding because a lot of people didn't like the Jalen Hurts pick 3 years back. They're like, oh, it's a waste of a second. What are you doing? We have Carson Wentz, but it kind of seems to be working out on both sides, and it's really exciting to see for the Eagles offense that they're just like they're firing on us all cylinders right now. It's great for them.
Yeah, and I even tweeted about what you just mentioned there that picking Hurts in round 2 was such a controversial move at the time, and everyone was killing Howie Roseman 2 years ago, and rightfully so. I'm not going to pretend I wasn't one of them, but imagine if like Howie Roseman just started doing what the fans wanted or were saying on the internet. Imagine if he paid attention to that stuff and he kind of, didn't go with his gut, didn't stick to his guns on a lot of these moves because yes, he did miss on Jalen Reagor and JJ Arcega-Whiteside, but put those two moves aside, the last 2 years has been nearly flawless for the Eagles front office, and it's paying dividends now. We see a team that I was looking at their schedule. You mentioned the Packers earlier. They're probably the hardest team the Eagles play, and I'm going to get to us in a sec here. I think we're going to be good, but right now we can't really stack up to the Eagles. And if we're their hardest game, you look at that schedule, they're playing the Saints too, but if Jameis is going to be dealing with this crazy back injury, if that sustains the season, that's going to be an easy win for the Eagles. And then you go down the line, it's like their division rivals all are mediocre, all 3 of them, I think. I know the Giants are 2-0, but I don't think they're contenders by any means. And then they're playing the AFC South, who there might not be a over 500 team in that division. The Eagles might be like 15-2 this year. I know that's crazy to say, but they very much could be a runaway best record in the league this year.
Yeah, no, I totally get what you're saying. From the Eagles right now have shown a lot, and you mentioned the Lions game, and a lot of people are talking about that. But I just think it just goes to show how good the Lions actually are this year. We saw it against the Commanders. The Lions were pretty good in that game too. I don't think anyone should say that the Eagles are not a bad team because they're great. They're definitely the number 1 team in the NFC right now, and it's kind of crazy to think about it because I really didn't think they would be. I thought they were going to be maybe 4 or 5, not number 1. But hats off to them. They've played amazingly so far.
Yeah, like I said before, it looks like my prediction might come true here. But yes, there's a lot of football left to be played. 15 more games, so we'll have to see how it all shakes out. But the Eagles fans have to be elated right now. Yeah. We saw James Harden at the game last night. Bryce Harper was there. The vibes are just great in Philly right now. So you got to respect what the Eagles are doing. Getting back to my Packers, I want to keep this brief because I don't have a lot to say this week. It's just the fact that we still own you. It's that simple. We still own the Chicago Bears. That's how it is. That's how it always will be if Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback. We got another win. I don't think we've lost to them in almost 4 seasons now. I thought this was a standard performance. Rodgers, he was 19 for 26 passing, or 19 for 25, actually, I believe. But Rodgers had a good game. He had a couple touchdowns. Aaron Jones looked spectacular. The defense was okay. I liked what the secondary did. I mean, the Bears had no passing game. Justin Fields only passed 11 times, and their lead receiver was Equanimous St. Brown with 39 yards. So the secondary did its job. The only thing I'm concerned about with the Packers right now is like I thought our run defense was going to be vastly improved. It already improved last year with Devondre Campbell, but bringing in Quay Walker and bringing in some improved D-line depth, I thought this was going to be a much better run defense. And man, David Montgomery, who's okay, but I don't think he's a world-beating running back. He was killing us in the second half this week. And I know a lot of Bears fans were talking about that Justin Fields touchdown that was overruled, like the goal line thing. I do think he got that, but even still, that's still a 10-point win for us. But overall, with the Packers, I think it's definitely a good team, but I don't know. I'm interested to see how the offense develops as the season progresses. I think we need to feature Jones and Dillon heavily, and I think they featured them this week. I don't know about the heavily part. I still think they were sprinkling in some other stuff that maybe shouldn't have been prioritized over getting those two backs involved, because I still don't think they've maximized Jones and Dillon as a pair, where the first game Dillon was getting all the looks, and this game, yes, Dillon had a couple good runs, but I didn't think he got a lot involved in the pass game. It all went to Aaron Jones. So until like a guy like Dobbs or Watson can really solidify themselves, I think we need to prioritize the backs, and I don't know if we did that this week. And coming in against a good Tampa defense, I'm a little worried. What do you make of the Packers right now?
I want to say that the Packers, after the Bears win, they're really settling in and I think they're going to be fine. But I can't say that with certainty just yet, I don't want to say that obviously to you as a Packers fan, but, after a shaky loss to the Vikings week 1 and, they kind of let the Bears get a little bit back into the game, obviously not totally in the second week, it doesn't bode super well. But I still am waiting for weeks 3 and 4, especially to really see if the Packers can, bring it back together. And I think they will, but I just don't want to say for certainty anything that this is like one of the better teams in the NFC yet, because we just haven't really seen them do that yet. But I think they have the capabilities to, and I think they will. Like, I'm not super worried about it, but just I do need to see more out of them these next few weeks.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I like that we were running some run pass options. I like that Aaron Rodgers was giving the ball to Jones instead of trying to force it to some of his receivers. I thought the receiving core played well with what they were given, and I kind of like what they're doing right now. I think that we shouldn't be targeting one guy heavily. I like that we're spreading the ball around, but I also just wish we would establish the run earlier. Like one drive, we did really good on a run play, and then the next drive out, we passed 3 times and then punted. It's like, well, why are we going away from what works when we might have the best or at least the second best behind Chubb and Hunt? Like we have a top 2 running back room in the NFL right now. You got to use it. I don't care if Aaron Rodgers is there. We have a lot of unproven or older guys at receiver, and until they really start to gel with Rodgers, like I said, I think we got to prioritize those backs. Now, David Bakhtiari's, he might be coming back this week. He's been questionable the first 2 weeks. It seems like they're easing him back. I even wore my jersey on Sunday, hoping that would be a good omen to get him back in the lineup, but he didn't play. Elgton Jenkins came back, which was good. So if we can get 2 Pro Bowl tackles back, we got one back last week. If we can get one back, we can talk about this more on Friday when we preview next week's games. But this Tampa Packers games can be really interesting because I think the loser of that game, all of a sudden, it's like, is this team really a Super Bowl contender? I think this is kind of a really important matchup for those 2 teams.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think it's going to be really interesting to watch, though, and I think that's what's really fun about this NFL season so far is we've seen a lot of unexpected things happening, and I think it's gonna be great. I'm really excited to watch this like upcoming slate of games. It's just there's a lot of games I've circled that I'm really interested in, and I think that's great right now.
Definitely. And speaking of Tampa, we got to address this weird game that went down between the Saints and Buccaneers this week because so it was 3-3 for ages.
Yeah.
And then somehow I don't get how when Mike Evans got ejected, we're going to talk about that fight, but when Mike Evans got ejected, all of a sudden Tampa's offense started actually working. Like they didn't have Godwin, they didn't have Julio, then they lost to Mike Evans. And then all of a sudden Brady went down the field on them twice. Scotty Miller was somehow back in the lineup. I haven't seen him in a year. Brashad Perriman had a touchdown. All of a sudden the Buccaneers just wound up winning 20-10. Jameis was playing with 4 broken bones in his back. I don't know why he played in this game. I would have sat a week if I was the Saints, maybe even 2 weeks. I would sit him this week if I was New Orleans. Just Andy Dalton, yes, is he great anymore? No. but he's capable at backup. I mean, he wasn't even that bad for Dallas 2 years ago. Just give him 2 weeks. They got good receivers. Just try to make it work. You got that defense. I don't know. I wouldn't want Jameis being hurt. They didn't have Kamara this week. It was a weird loss for the Saints, but I'm not totally out on the Saints, assuming they get healthy. But if Jameis is going to be playing with this back injury for down the line for much of this season, as I mentioned earlier, I'm a bit concerned for them. But it was a big win for Tampa, but it was very funny to see Lattimore and Evans get back into it. What was your opinion on the game, but also the fight that broke out?
I think the Bucks kind of were handed the game. I'll be honest with you. I don't think like either team was playing amazingly so far.
I don't know.
I think although the fight was hilarious, I think it's really funny that Mike Evans just has crazy beef with Marshawn Lattimore just because Marshawn Lattimore locks him up.
Yeah.
And I just think that's kind of funny.
Yeah.
And it was also kind of funny to see Tom Brady instigating this whole fight, and then the moment the actual shoving and punching started happening,
you imagine if Aaron Rodgers did that?
He just moved out of the way. He said, "Nope, it's not my problem anymore." Even after he instigated a fight, he got his teammate suspended. From a lot of the Buccaneers players, I saw a lot of like just immaturity. Even after the game, we saw Devin White. He was like talking about Jameis Winston. He was like, "Oh, we saw what he did for the team. We knew he was going to hand us the ball a lot." And then there's this video that leaked after, not leaked, but it was on like Fournette's Instagram Live that Chris Godwin was trying to like talk to him on the plane after. He was like, "Yo, why'd you say that about Jameis? Like, I understand that Jameis maybe wasn't the best quarterback, but that's still our teammate. He did right by us. Why are you disrespecting him like this?" And I'm just seeing a lot of these young guys, or these younger guys, I guess, kind of immature. Like Fournette also started fighting. He also was one of the main instigators in this fight as well with Marshawn Lattimore.
Gets suspended in the past for on-field brawls as well.
Yeah, it's not the first time. It's not. I just don't think the Bucks are a great team this year. We've kind of like they were only had 3 points on the board all game until kind of the suspensions happened and then the ejections and all that, and then they were kind of handed a free touchdown to begin with. And so ultimately, I don't think the Buccaneers are a great team. It's definitely not good that they're already missing Julio Jones and Godwin to injuries. And now Mike Evans is suspended a game. So now their top receivers are going to be like Russell Gage and Scotty Miller, which also wasn't great for them. Tom Brady didn't play excellently in this game. I don't think. I think he was just very mid, very, very just okay. So, the run game was kind of okay too. They didn't really have anything going for them. So I don't think the Buccaneers season is going to go as well as many hoped it would be because Tom Brady came back out of retirement.
Yeah. And it's going to be a pain if they beat us next week because they really should not beat the Packers, but their defense has looked good. I'll give them that for sure, but they seem to have the injury bug this year. I'm going to hold off on any like concrete Brady takes because I want to watch him play a few more times. But the early results, like we've already talked about his off-field stuff right now, just because it feels like he should be retired right now and he isn't. He just feels that he needs to keep playing. And that's fair because I think you mentioned to me, not on the pod, but we were talking about it. And, it's hard for people to just retire, especially someone like Brady who's been doing this for like a quarter of a century, pretty much 25 years in the NFL, basically almost. And yeah, it's hard to step away from that. But sometimes, I don't really know how to say it, but I just feel like he should have retired. That's basically my opinion. Yeah. Now, I might be eating my words if he somehow like lights us up next week and Scotty Miller goes for 150 yards on the Packers, but I don't know. Early returns on Brady. I don't know if this is going to go great for Tampa offensively this year.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It also just seems that also like I know off the field stuff isn't football related, but it kind of seems like that's also kind of affecting him. These rumors flying around that like him and his wife are going through it because she didn't like that he unretired and all that. And it's just very complicated because it seems to really be affecting his play and the Buccaneers as a whole. And I do agree. I do think he should have retired. I think like what else is there for Tom Brady to do with his career that he needs to get done? Like the guy is 46. I don't understand it. Me personally, if I was that age, you've accomplished everything. You're undeniably the best quarterback of all time. Why are you still here? It kind of seems like he might honestly hold the Buccaneers back if he doesn't really up his play. Tom Brady.
That's kind of what I think that's what my point was. I was trying to make.
Yeah, it's like, and I agree with you. I don't want to say anything concrete because it still is Tom Brady. Like we can't disparage him just yet, but it's not looking promising right now. And if this continues, he's going to be holding this team back. And that's not something I ever expected to say about Tom Brady.
Yeah.
And I think if this season does not go as planned, he's really going to regret not retiring. And it's not going to be a huge blemish on his career, but it definitely will be a blemish that he's not really going to be able to forget.
If it's just so much is going on in his head right now that he can't fully 100% be the Tom Brady we've known for so long, I don't know. I can't say Tampa is a Super Bowl contender for sure right now.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's not. Their season seems to be very up in the air right now, and I'm not really sure what to think of it just yet. I do agree that we're gonna have to wait to say anything concrete about them. But if this trend continues, I think it's gonna be a really disappointing season for this team.
I agree, and I think that would be a big surprise to many in the NFL. And speaking of surprise teams, I think we wanted to cover just through the first 2 weeks. We're gonna switch gears a little here. What team is like maybe excited you the most? Who surprised you the most outside of Miami, of course? We already talked about them a lot, but some of these other teams, who's really caught your eye in these first few weeks? Who do you think has really started to turn the corner?
I mean, honestly, two teams that I really like, even though the records aren't amazing. One of them is 0-2, the other is 1-1.
Okay.
I'm actually really excited about what I'm seeing out of the Jaguars and the Falcons. I think the Jaguars played amazingly against the Colts. And, I was telling you, even though they lost against the Commanders, I still think the Jaguars played a really solid game. Yeah. The defense played great too. Tyson Campbell was excellent. The safeties were pretty good too that game. The linebackers were great. The D-line was amazing. They're putting a lot of pressure on Matt Ryan, Trayvon Walker, Josh Allen. That's a great duo to have. I really liked what we saw at Trayvon Walker. A lot of people also talked about him, how he shouldn't have been the first overall pick, but I think he's really showing that he can be worth that overall pick. He's got a lot of athleticism, a lot of raw talent, and it seems he's really this coaching staff has really helped him so far. And also the Falcons. The Falcons are 0-2. I don't think the Falcons are going to go anywhere crazy. I think the Jaguars might be a sneaky team, possibly fighting for a wild card spot if they continue to play like this. The Falcons, I don't think so, not so much, because it kind of seems like they can't really close out games. But I like what the Falcons are showing outside of, their fourth quarter performances. I think they're playing great, and I do think it helps that they definitely played a kind of suspect Rams team, but I did like what I saw from them. Marcus Mariota, I think he played great. Showed some good improvising abilities. That's what we liked out of him coming out of Oregon. Drake London as well played great. Cordell Patterson, it's nice to see he's still playing decently. It's not just a one-year breakout. So I really like what both of these teams have showed. And also it's kind of funny because on the flip side, I would think two of the most disappointing things are the Colts and Rams, respectively, the two teams who played them.
Yeah,
I don't like what I'm seeing out of them.
That's a good point. I think we'll get to them in a sec here. I just wanted to talk about the Jags as well. They're definitely someone I circled. I don't think the AFC South winner is going to be any better than 9-8, and 9-8 might be pushing it, but I think it could be the Jags because I just see Doug Peterson. He brings that. I mean, Eagles fans know he brings a certain type of enthusiasm to a team that he's coaching, even if he isn't the master strategist out there. I really have always liked the way he coaches the football teams. Whenever you see clips of him talking to the team, any press conference, he always seems at least to be in a good mood most of the time. He usually seems to be like he wants to actually be coaching football, and that's always a good thing. And I think especially when you compare it to Urban Meyer, that's a substantial upgrade. But not to mention that this defense actually does look pretty good. I mean, they signed Shaquille Griffin, who's been pretty good at corner these first two games. Like you mentioned, Tyson Campbell in year two has been improving. Josh Allen's a great pass rusher on the rise. Trayvon Walker, even though he's not, probably not going to win Defensive Rookie of the Year, that's probably going to be Aiden, who looked really good this week. But sure. Trayvon Walker's been pretty solid so far as well. He had that interception. So I don't know. I like this Jags team. I like the offense. I think the run game is the last piece here. If they can get Etienne and Robinson to go from two mediocre backs to two backs that can really coexist and play well, and I know Robinson's coming off the injury, Etienne's only 2 games into his career, so they got time. But if those guys get in a groove, then this team could really maybe even be like a 10-win team, I think, just because of how easy their schedule is against their division opponents. But I do really like what I've seen from the Jags, and I think they're going to have a surprise season for sure, and they definitely surprised me because we said, we thought they were going to be interesting, but definitely not a playoff team, and it looks like we could be wrong about that. I'm interested, I wouldn't have put the Falcons on there though, and here's my case why. I like what Drake London has done. He's succeeded. He's surpassed my expectations so far in Atlanta. I just wasn't sure if they were going to be able to get him the ball. The Kyle Pitts situation is really concerning. I don't like what Arthur Smith had to say about it. I know he was probably just trying to get through the post-game presser, but I don't know. You got to have a better reason for not getting Kyle Pitts the ball than, well, Kadero Hodge was open on one play. That was only one play of the whole game. Kyle Pitts has 4 catches in 2 games. This is a generational player on our
Yeah.
hands. And that's only one of my issues with them. Not to mention that the fact that the Falcons are massive choke artists. I mean, we saw them choke the lead to the Saints in week 1. And yes, they played well against the Rams this week, but as you mentioned, they still couldn't finish the job. They still lost to the Rams. I don't care if they only lost by 4. It's more of an indictment, as you said earlier, of the Rams that they didn't beat the Falcons by a lot more than the Falcons like hanging tough in there, in my opinion. I think that besides AJ Terrell and Casey Hayward, who are a pretty good corner tandem, especially AJ Terrell, of course, being one of the best in the league, but the rest of that defense is pretty shaky. I don't think it's going to hold up throughout the season. I think the Falcons are just going to have to take it slow because this is a rebuild. But that being said, if you're in a rebuild, you got to get your franchise player Kyle Pitts involved. I'm sorry, that's a huge issue for me.
Yeah, no, I do agree. Yeah, I'm not trying to say that the Falcons are going to do anything crazy this season. I just think that they've kind of exceeded expectations because I honestly did believe that they're going to be like a bottom 3 team in the league. And they've shown me they've got a lot of potential for future seasons, just not currently this one. So I'm not trying to say that like, oh, they're going to go anywhere, but I think they're showing a lot of potential, which is cool. But if we do want a team who's actually like showing out and I think is going to have a decent season, I think the Lions are kind of a sneaky team to do that, kind of similar to the Jags. They're 1-1, but they really showed out in their second week performances and really showed that they are capable of being a good team.
I can't believe how good their offense is, but it was sitting right in front of us. I mean, you look at who's on their roster. Amon-Ra St. Brown is insane. He hasn't had less than 8 catches in his last 10 games, I believe it is, since going back to last season. He was a huge find for them in round 4. He's going to be there for a while. Chark didn't do much this week, but I think that's just bad luck. I think he's going to be a good receiver too. Swift was dealing with the injury, so they kind of limited his carries this week, but when he got the ball in his hands, he had the receiving touchdown and like a 50-yard run. So he looked electric. Jamal Williams is a good number 2 back. And they haven't even really gotten Hawkinson involved. And they're going to get Jameson Williams back halfway through the year. They got skill position players all over this offense. The thing that might hold them back from being a playoff team is Jared Goff. But Jared Goff played pretty well this week, admittedly against Carson Wentz and the Commanders. But nonetheless, I thought he had a pretty good game this week. We'll have to see how it goes. But I definitely hear your point on that offense. Do you think Jared Goff, I know he's got a good O-line with him right now in Detroit, but do you think he can sustain this performance, or do you think he's going to, fall victim to some better defenses going forward?
I do think he's going to fall victim to some excellent defenses. He played well against the Commanders because I think the Commanders don't have the greatest defense in the world just yet. Their strong suit is really their D-line. It's not necessarily their secondary, especially with William Jackson, who played terribly in that game. He's supposed to be the number 1 corner. He's letting Amon-Ra St. Brown run all over him. Jared Goff did get to a Super Bowl, but I think a lot of that was a Sean McVay type thing and not necessarily him. I do think that the Lions are eventually going to draft a quarterback to replace him. But for now, I think Jared Goff is playing well enough that he's not losing the Lions any games so far.
I'm in agreement. And I'm definitely a little concerned because they're in our division. And all of a sudden, the Vikings and the Lions have looked pretty good on offense where we're still trying to find our footing. I know we killed the Bears, but we'll have to see how it goes. I think we can beat the Lions because one of the defenses that I think can really make Jared Goff feel that pass rush is the Packers. But it'll be interesting to see when we play them later in the season. But the Lions right now, I have to agree, they definitely have surprised me because I thought they were going to get better, but they could be even better than I expected them to be. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Now, you mentioned some teams you were disappointed in. I think the Colts is top of the list. We both had them being a very good team this year. I know Michael Pittman was out this week, but Matt Ryan doesn't look that good. Their defense without Shaquille Leonard has been really poor, I would say. I mean, a tie with the Texans and a shutout to the Jacksonville Jaguars, 2 division rivals that they should be able to run amok over. They haven't won in Jacksonville, I think, in their last 8 games, the stat was. So they got to figure that out. But the Colts could be in for a really bad season if they don't figure some stuff out, despite the talent they have.
I thought Matt Ryan was going to be able to bounce back from kind of a bad performance against the Houston Texans. I thought he was going to be able to bounce back against the Jaguars secondary. Maybe take advantage of Shaquille Griffin, who's a little up and down from time to time, but he didn't. He didn't play well. The corners kind of shut down his receivers, and it definitely helped that Pittman and Pierce both weren't playing. But I did not like what I saw from the Colts offense. Really, the only good player really was Jonathan Taylor, which does not bode well for them in the rest of the season. Because we talked about it. We thought this was a team who could be Super Bowl caliber. We thought they were going to run away with the division title, and it's not looking promising for them so far.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of this situation with the Colts. And I would say, well, we'll see when they play like maybe some easier teams, but I don't know. They had one of the easiest starts to the season this year. We were saying, similar to my argument with the Eagles, I was saying, look at this Colts schedule. It's really easy. Well, these two games to start the year was part of my argument, and now they haven't won either of them. So I don't know where they go from here. I know Leonard and Pittman are big players that coming back will help, but at the same time, I don't know. If Matt Ryan's not going to be able to play up the snuff, even behind that O-line, it's going to get ugly. I saw a tweet where they said the Colts fans had to wait till week 12 last year for Carson Wentz's fourth interception. They only had to wait 2 games for it this year with Matt Ryan. That really shows you what we're dealing with here with Matt Ryan these first 2 weeks, because Carson Wentz, as bad as he was at times last year, still was able to keep the turnovers relatively light, especially in the first half of the season with that Colts offensive line. Matt Ryan has not been able to take advantage of that whatsoever so far. And I like Matt Ryan. I hope he plays better, but it's looking pretty grim for Indianapolis right now.
It's not great, but I do think Jonathan Taylor is definitely going to try his best to keep them afloat in the meantime. And, maybe they can salvage the season a little bit, but it's not looking great for them. I totally agree with you. It's kind of a shame because I really was hoping Matt Ryan would be able to bounce back and play well, show that he's a good quarterback still, but he seems to be showing his age a little bit, and it's a shame that the season has played out this way so far.
Yeah, I hope it turns around for him. And you were mentioning the Rams. I agree. We saw them get totally destroyed by the Bills coming off their Super Bowl win in their first game since that game. And then this week, as I mentioned before, I would like to see more of them against the Atlanta Falcons. They don't really have much of a run game. Henderson's looks solid, but he isn't going to change the offense. Cam Akers looks terrible. He barely played week 1, and when he did play this week, he didn't do really anything. I know Allen Robinson had a touchdown, but he didn't have many other catches besides that touchdown. He looks like a bit part player in the offense.
Yeah.
And, that might be more of an Allen Robinson problem than a Sean McVay and Matt Stafford problem, but we'll see. And obviously with Stafford himself, the questions remain surrounding that elbow injury. It took Jalen Ramsey to have a miracle interception at the end of that game to seal the win, but that was after he let Drake London in his second game. I'm not saying it was all Jalen Ramsey, but Jalen Ramsey definitely played a part in trying to stop Drake London, and Drake London had 8 catches in this game. So I think the Rams need to play a lot better. We know Jalen Ramsey also allowed a perfect passer rating in the first game against Stephon Diggs. So I don't know what to make of the Rams. They could still make the playoffs, but now with the Niners getting Jimmy G back in there, and we can talk about the Niners, I guess, to wrap up here, but I don't know. I think the Niners might be the favorites for that division right now.
It's weird because, the Rams, I really did think that, a lot of teams have a Super Bowl hangover, but I didn't expect it to be this bad. And it seems like the Rams and Bengals are both suffering from it badly.
Yeah.
Because if the Rams season continues like this is like a weird thing to be like focused on, but I think it means we're going to see the end of Aaron Donald's career. We're going to see him retire soon.
Yeah, because there's rumors that he wanted to retire after that Super Bowl.
He's
it's kind of like what we were talking about with Brady, but he'll actually retire. It's like, what else do you have left to prove? You're the greatest defensive tackle of all time. You won a Super Bowl. You won a couple defensive player of the years. He might not have anything else left to prove, and maybe he'll actually retire. Maybe he'll do it.
And it would be a shame to really see him leave this early in his career, and I really hope the Rams can turn around, just because I think the Rams are a better team than this, but also because I don't want to see Aaron Donald retire just yet,
I will say it's interesting because Van Jefferson, despite what my friend JP might allege, Van Jefferson was a very good player for this team last year. He was a receiver. Getting him back in the lineup, he hasn't played this season yet. That'll give them another threat as a pass catcher. And later in the season, everyone expects Odell Beckham to return to the team. I hope he does, because I think it's a good fit for him. So maybe come a little after Thanksgiving, all of a sudden this Rams team could have 4 receivers again. And I think Van Jefferson will be back a lot quicker than that. But if they get Odell later in the year, if they're sitting at 9-8, make the playoffs, maybe they're in store for a nice fairy tale run once again in the playoffs. But until then, as of now, things are looking a little bit concerning, as we both agree here.
I think Van Jefferson, it's kind of weird that your friend was saying that he's not important to the Rams team, but Honestly, at this rate, I think Van Jefferson would be an improvement over Allen Robinson, or actually maybe not Robinson, but like Skoranek.
Well,
You
yeah,
know,
definitely Skoranek.
I don't know why I was thinking like I don't know why I was thinking like only two wide receivers, but yeah, no, like definitely an improvement because it's kind of weird. I mentioned this a little bit last week, but the fact that like they only ran 11 personnel all of
Yeah.
like the last game against the Bills, and it's kind of weird to see like Skoranek considered a starter when
I
I
like the
don't think he
people who
should
just say
be.
he's a Cooper Cup decoy. Like he's supposed to confuse defenders and then make him think he's Cooper Cup. I don't know if that's true, but I
I
don't really know
don't
what
know.
Skoranek does well. So
Yeah, I do think that getting Van Jefferson back is gonna be huge for this team. I think if Odell hopefully comes back to this team, that's also another massive improvement for this offense. I think if you slot in Jefferson and Odell to replace Robinson and Skoranek, I think this is a much better team already with them in the lineup.
yeah.
But we're gonna have to wait and see. Van Jefferson, hopefully he gets healthy soon. Hopefully Odell signs with the Rams again once he's fully healthy. I was expecting them to go back to the Super Bowl this year, and they haven't lived up to that yet. But hopefully they can.
Yeah, for sure. And just to wrap up our episode here today, the Niners, terrible news out of that game because Trey Lance, he's out for the season with the broken ankle. We really didn't get a chance to see what Trey Lance can do whatsoever. He played in the pouring rain on the road, and then he passed 3 times, ran 3 times, and got hurt. And now he's out
Yeah.
for the season. And here's my thing about the Niners. Like, they just never should have started Trey Lance, in my opinion. And I don't say like, oh, because he got hurt. Yes, it's hindsight's 2020, but I was always of the opinion that Jimmy G never lost his job. He just made an NFC title game and he made a Super Bowl 2 years before that. Why don't you let Trey Lance learn another year? He's one of the youngest players to start week 1 in NFL history at quarterback. So obviously he needed time to grow. And I just don't get why Jimmy G wasn't the starter to start the season. And I get now he'll be the starter, but it pretty much cost Trey Lance his entire season in a major injury. And if Jimmy G does get hurt, as he has in the past, now you don't have Trey Lance either. You got, what is it, Nate Sudfeld? So
Yeah.
I think the Niners handled this terribly. And obviously, prayers and thoughts out to Trey Lance that he gets better. But
I was a big supporter of Trey Lance. I thought that, I was like, Trey Lance, he's gonna do great. But in hindsight, I totally do agree with a lot of people saying Jimmy G still should have been the starter. And if the reports are to be believed, some of the Niners players feel that way as well. There's these reports coming out saying that a lot of them have privately told the team that we feel Jimmy should have been the starter anyways to begin with. And I think that him being back as a starter is a good thing for the team. I think it's consistency. And Trey Lance, it was also kind of weird the way they were using him. They were rushing him a lot for some reason instead of having him throw so much. And it's a lot of people was questioning what the front office and what the coaching staff are trying to do with these quarterbacks. But unfortunately, now their hand has been forced and they have to play Jimmy G now because Trey Lance is out for the season. It's kind of weird to have wasted his season like that. And it's definitely a very interesting situation with what's happening here.
definitely, I can't really criticize the Niners front office too much because John Lynch has made a bunch of great moves, but this is just puzzling. Even trading up for Trey Lance was a little weird in the moment, but I guess if you see something in a quarterback you think he's going to be great, go ahead and do it, but at least work him in at a normal rate. I think they really rushed, like you said. I don't know if the Niners as a team maybe supported Trey Lance becoming the starter, so it's kind of a weird situation. Now, the Niners, I think, as I said before, I think they're equipped for a nice run here now because they're basically the team they were last year. Although they've already lost 2 running backs, as usual, the running backs are hurt. Elijah Mitchell's out half the season, and now Ty Davis Price has a high ankle sprain. He's going to be out as well. So the Niners' backfield continues to to see bodies dropping every week. Jeff Wilson's still healthy, but he's had an injury history as well. We could see Kyle Juszczyk as RB1 by week 4 at this rate. I don't know what to make of the Niners running back situation. I don't know why it happens every year, but it does. So they're going to have to figure that out as well.
It's something with the 49ers. It's weird. I don't really know what they're doing. I don't know what's happening with them. There's a lot of questionable decisions being made. And on top of that, I agree the running back room it's struggling with the injuries right now, and that's also a shame too. There's a lot of weird stuff going on with the 49ers, but all in all, I still do think they are the best team in their division currently, unless, of course, the Rams can really put together a few good games in a row.
Yeah, like we said, the Rams, they're just not – they got to figure out some stuff. So I think the Niners definitely could compete for that division, but I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. It's only week 2, as we mentioned, of course, many times. So there's plenty of football left to be played.
It's definitely been interesting, first 2 weeks of the NFL season, but I'm actually really enjoying that. I think it's really fun to see these kind of weird happenings, with the teams, and I think it's really interesting so far with the season. But it's kind of weird to see a lot of teams underperforming, a lot of teams overperforming, and it's going to be a great season. I'm really excited to watch the rest of it play out. Got 15 more weeks on top of the playoffs, and I think it's going to be great.
Yeah, a lot of, like you said, there's been a lot of upsets already. There's been a lot of high scoring games that maybe people didn't expect to be great games. But hey, start of the season, anything can happen. So it's been a lot of fun. I agree. That's going to do it for this episode of the Fan Committee. Thank you guys for listening. Make sure to follow on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Yes, and other than that, we'll be back on Friday. We'll be projecting next week's games. And other than that, thank you guys for listening. Have a great rest of your day.